Hello, we're here with another episode of our SCV35 Above the Bar interviews. Today we're very fortunate to have SCV35 Board President, Mr. René Ramírez, to spend some time with us and answer some questions about the district and how we're doing and his time as the president. He's been an educator for 36 years and been on our board for 5 years. So with that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with education?
Yes, I've been lucky, I've taught a lot of different subjects. I've taught everything from Spanish to German to algebra to science, which I was very grateful to you and John Fanning for because I had never taught this and it was quite the challenge. But I tried my hardest and I learned a lot about what it's like to start from scratch again with a subject and have to teach it. Because I was hired to teach math, the majority of my schedule that year in Calabasas, but I was fortunate enough to be able to teach science, and so I tried my hardest. I had pretty good Galileo scores and math scores, but it was enriching. And I also got a chance to teach adults at Rio Salado Community College in my career, so it was fun to teach adults as well.
So it's a very, very extensive career, especially working in our district for 20 years, and currently you are teaching at Nogales High School.
Yes, sir. And as I mentioned last night at the governing board meeting, that's like a catch-22 because I love my kids and I love working in my district, but at the same time, I have an obligation as president of District 35 to look out for our kids as well. So some of the kids, as you know, go down there, but some come up here. But I'm glad you mentioned Nogales because, as you well know, there was some rumor spread that I wanted to make this place like Nogi, which just wasn't true, and I spent the majority of my career teaching at Rio Rico High School, and that's where I retired from. I was the chess coach for 20 years, and I took my team to state 16 out of 20 years, which I'm very proud of. And I also got to coach basketball, and I was lucky there because I didn't come out of the sports world as you did, nor John Fanning, nor others who had been in that position, or Jeff Madden, who we all love. And so that was a challenge, but I was fortunate because there's nothing like being the leader of a program like that and the lead program like that in our district. And it was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun as well. And I also took over 250 of our students from this community to Germany through the German-American Partnership Program. So I'm very vested in going back to those rumors. I mean, if anybody had any doubts, well, you shouldn't anymore because I was always vested in our community. My daughter went to school here. She was a valedictorian for the class of 2008. And so even though she's not here anymore in Rio Rico, she graduated from Arizona, went on to UMSL, got her master's, and now works in Goodyear. Even though my family's not here going to school, I still feel the same. It's really weird. I actually feel even more responsible than before and even more excited about our district.
So again, you've been in education for many, many years and then transitioning into the school board. So what drew you into wanting to become a school board member?
Well, as my cousin once said, and I asked him too if I could quote him, Hector Arana, I really liked what he said. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a positive difference in our district, and I felt that I brought a lot of experience as a teacher to the governing board. But I wanted to make a big difference in a positive way.
And so being a board member, it's service to our community. So one, we want to thank you for serving our community because it's something that, for those that don't know, it's an unpaid position where they spend a lot of time and hours serving our community and making some difficult decisions at times. And so you had the fortune of being on the school board during COVID. So, going back and looking at that, having to be a board member, how would you say that experience for you as a board member, having to make those tough decisions, how was that experience?
Wow, Dave, that's a really great question. I can tell you quite honestly that it was very frustrating at times because, as you well know, back then we didn't know how things were going to work out. As one superintendent said, we didn't have a playbook for this kind of thing, and it was also the most challenging thing that I've ever encountered as a school board member. The decisions were hard, and we don't, as you well know, we don't always see eye to eye on the school board. There are people with very strong opinions and opposing opinions, and though it's frustrating, it's what makes our democracy so great, is that we have varied opinions and that we have to accept them, and it makes us reflect often on ourselves, even when we make mistakes. And as Abraham Lincoln said, it's in those moments when you have to seek the better angels of your soul, the better angels of your nature, as he said. And so it makes you reflect a lot. And during that time, during COVID, well, we didn't know how we were supposed to respond to this, and I felt for the people in our community, especially everybody in our community, and including our staff, and I was concerned because we didn't know what it would be like to have, what the results were going to be, the ramifications of continuing to remain open. And you and I have not always seen eye to eye, but it's incredible how we get along so well. And I want everybody to know that I support Mr. Verdugo, and we've not always seen eye to eye, like I said, but Mr. Verdugo guided our ship very well throughout that time. This whole team, Dr. Lunderville too, who did a lot of testing and had all kinds of interesting ideas and interesting things to do, but the governing board voted 5-0, as you remember, to support you and give you the reins to take care of business as you saw fit. And I like that a lot. In retrospect, I think it was one of the best decisions we made so that we wouldn't micromanage the superintendent. He needed to guide the ship, but we gave him advice, and that's what our role is as governing board members. Sometimes we want to do more micromanagement. We kind of trip up on ourselves, but we catch ourselves too, and we have to pull the reins, and that's hard to do when you're highly opinionated. So, yes, COVID was very difficult, Mr. Verdugo, and I felt that you sailed through that beautifully, and your team did a great job, and we tried our best to protect everybody within our community. And that was a tough time, but we got through it, and I learned a lot. There's always a learning curve, and you're a student of this life, no matter how long you've been in anything, in public education or as a governing school board member.
And so, kind of shifting into a more positive. So now that you've been on the board for 5 years and learning the ins and outs of being a board member, what would you say is one of your greatest accomplishments of being a board member for the 5 years? What are you really happy about that has happened to the school district in those 5 years?
Yikes, I was always taught by my dad not to be blowing your horn about stuff, so I really don't like to do that. I think what I would like to say here, because Mr. Verdugo is very modest, is that thanks to your vision, not a lot of superintendents, by the way, have the vision that Mr. Verdugo has. And I'm not saying that to butter him up. He and I know each other well, and like I said to you before, we don't always see eye to eye. And we've had our moments where we've had a lot of frustration or we didn't agree on things, even with fellow colleagues. But I tell you, he's got some vision. And thanks to his vision, he didn't sit around like, I don't mean to insult other superintendents that came, because I know they worked hard too, but Mr. Verdugo brought a vision, and he's followed through on it, and as a consequence, we passed the bond and the override, and we were able to secure the funds necessary to build all of the beautiful buildings that we now have, and to lift up this community, lift up our school, thanks to him. And as I said at graduation, the high schools, all the schools, of course, are the heart of our community, but the high school especially. In a little town like this, our school, especially Rio Rico High School, is the heart of our community. So thanks to his vision, we've done a lot of great things. And I think we've come along and done things to help you. And, I try to use my strength, which is spatial skills as I'm a chess player, to try to contribute to the governing board, but every member contributes something good to the governing board, and it's important that we listen to all of them and try to come up with some kind of consensus and support you and act as a unit, act as a team.
Thank you, and I appreciate the compliment, and I think, again, it's very nice to have the board support. Kind of shifting a little bit, as a board president, you're responsible for conducting meetings and so on, but you also are kind of a voice for the board at times. So we've had some issues which are kind of nationwide with threats and incredible threats, and I know that you wrote an opinion piece for the Nogales International Youth. So would you like to share some of that information of how, us as a district and guiding with the board, how we deal with those credible threats, and just so that the community knows that the board is very interested in making sure that our community is safe, but also making sure that we don't be held hostage by, somebody writing something on a wall.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that was one of the main things, that was the focus of the article that I wrote. I did a lot of research on this issue because I felt that I really needed to read and get my head around it. And I had a concern because I started to see a rash of these lockdowns within Santa Cruz County, not only in District 35, but in NUSD as well. And so I was trying to trace the root of it, and many times it was just, as you mentioned, a simple thing, a kid going to a bathroom wall and writing with a marker and forcing us to go on lockdown. And I mentioned how difficult it is with everybody on our staff and administration when it comes to these kinds of things, because we have to respond to them, obviously, but by the same token, we have to be careful how we respond to them. We have people on both sides of the aisle, and people will say, well, you guys aren't doing enough, and you didn't act enough, and didn't get law enforcement involved enough. And then we have others that say, my gosh, you're alarmist, and you're making us run back to the school and make me drive down the highway or drive down a busy road. And, my heart palpitating and me being worried as a parent about my child. And in the time that we live in now, with all of these terrible gun incidents and gun violence, the parents feel like they're sitting on a tinderbox, and they're scared out of their minds. And so we have to be concerned about that as well. Remember something, that it's dangerous too for people to be rushing down the highways and to come to pick up the kids. They could make a mistake and they themselves lose their lives. So I was very concerned about this. I was concerned about the ramifications of it. They could also be dangerous. So I did a lot of extensive research, and it turned out that we had two things that we had to be concerned with, that we have to put in action with regard to this issue. And one is that we have to be very tough if we do find out the individuals who started all of this. We have to be very firm on them, and the consequences have to be tough. Even though we love our kids, we have to be, otherwise they'll continue to do this kind of thing. And so it's unfortunate too, because we love the kids and we want to do what's right by them, but we also have to be very strict. We can't be afraid to be that way. And that was one of the things. It's not just me. This is what was mentioned in a lot of the research I saw, that law enforcement and the district have to be very hard. Okay, so with that, I don't want to get into that too much, whipping a dead horse there. So, but it's important. And then the second thing that I think a lot of people have not talked about is the credibility. So we have to do a better job of checking the credibility, because if we find out that it's just a kid writing on a marker and it's just a fake threat, as I mentioned in the article, then we can't be such alarmists that we set all of these things in motion and we drag law enforcement. And as you well know, once we have law enforcement involved, that's it. They get involved and they have their job to do, and they follow through, and it just sets off a bunch of other different things that we can't take back, and it alarms our parents. And we have people who believe that things have happened in our district that never happened. We heard rumors, even on Facebook, people saying that we had shooters on our roofs, and all kinds of interesting things that were just never true. So we always have to check the credibility so that we don't go into unnecessary lockdowns that not only disrupt the educational process, but that also endanger our parents and our community, the rest of our community. So those are the two main things, and the crux is the credibility. But I feel that everybody in Santa Cruz County has done a better job because we haven't had any serious lockdowns since then. I think we had one after I wrote the article, but that's it. And it wasn't here in District 35. So we've done a better job of that. And sometimes you think that one person can't make a difference, but maybe, I don't mean to boast, but maybe that article made people think a little bit more. And so you asked me about leadership, and there's an example of something that we had to do as a governing board to be tough. But I admire you guys. It was your administration that really started checking credibility. We've done a better job of that.
Well, thank you, and I think that part of that is also the board supporting our investment in over $1 million of safety and security items with additional cameras. We have cameras on all of our campus, which was over $1 million that we invested as a district, as well as new radio systems that allow us to interact with local law enforcement if we need to. So again, thank you to the board for supporting that. And so I think that those go hand in hand with making sure that we follow policy and procedure from the board, but also then doing our part to invest with items that will help us maintain safety and security, because we know that that's an important part of our district. So kind of shifting again here a little bit with the board. Recently we had a study session, and during that study session we spent a lot of time talking about two different topics. One, cell phones, and the other is dress code. And so those are important pieces of how we maintain not only our safety and security, but then just our discipline and culture on our campuses. So would you want to share a little bit about what the board's discussion was on cell phones?
Sure. First, I want to thank you, because change is not always easy, and I feel that we've made, I feel to your credit, but also giving credit to Mr. Knoib, I feel that we've made changes at the school to improve upon the dress code. And so I'm very grateful, because, as you know, sometimes people can just play politics for politics' sake, and they can wrestle, in front of the public and not take care of business. But we always try our hardest here in District 35 to take care of business. When we saw that the situation was getting out of control, I admire you, Mr. Verdugo, because you took the bull by the horns. You could have continued to say, well, everything's peachy keen, but you didn't, and you took the bull by the horns, and so did Mr. Knoib and all of his staff. There's so many people out there that I always feel that we don't give enough credit to, But you guys are the main people, and we've made a change with that, and you have to be decisive in situations like that. And as a leader that you can't be wishy-washy. When it comes to things like that, you have to be decisive. And you may alienate a lot of people, but you have to be tough in this business. And so we the board insisted upon there being a stricter dress code, and I know that many people in the community wanted this. And they also wanted us to be stricter with regard to cell phones, because many of them know that kids don't learn as well if they're distracted by this. Recently at the Citizens Council in Tubac, we talked about that, about just how there are rules for distracted driving, and so we should have rules for distracted learning as well. So there's some interesting things that have come about recently with regard to this subject. But we are trying our hardest to be strict about it. And we do have policy now so that kids can't use their phones when they're in the classroom, and when the time they arrive to the time that they leave. And we're trying hard to enforce those rules. I think we still have a ways to go, but we're getting better at it. And we have some pretty innovative ways of dealing with it. As I mentioned at last night's governing board meeting, we have some colleagues like Hallie Burkett and Mr. Rodriguez who have tried some new things, some new ideas out in the classroom, such as having the kids put their cell phones in clear plastic bags so that they can still see them, and they have this psychological feeling that they're still there, but they don't use them. And I talked to Ms. Burkett, and I found that interesting. You know, I'm old school. I'm very traditionalist, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't, as you know from that meeting, I think I was the only school board member who had this draconian kind of view about what we should do, which is, I don't want to even have those things come to the school. But Mr. Shadler and I had some interesting conversations afterward. He was saying how we have to adjust to the times. Even the students have written me letters telling me, Mr. Ramírez, and very politely too, by the way, and they said to me that you have to adjust to the times, sir, and you have to take into consideration that things aren't the way they were when you went to school. And I take that to heart. But still, we have to be firm. So, but I like the idea. I like these new ideas, and they seem to work. Ms. Burkett says she has no problems with the cell phones. So maybe that's the way to go. I know Mr. Knoip doesn't want to take them away too, so maybe that's a nice way to go. And maybe, as I said last night, we can get this thing to spread, you know, among other colleagues. Maybe get them to at least try it out and see whether it works or not. Because I don't want to punish the kids. I'm not here to punish kids. I'm here to make things good for the kids. It's all about the kids. But we have to, like I said to you before, you have to remain open-minded, and you have to try to accept new ideas. And so I saw that one and I liked it because we want to resolve it. We don't want to punish kids. But we want to make sure that we don't have interrupted learning. Because as Mr. Beach mentioned in that Harvard study, if a kid has a cell phone right there and it's on, they're able to, even if it's in their backpack, and you know, they're tempted to be looking at it and checking it and all that kind of thing. So we don't want that kind of thing because we want our kids to learn, and we don't want them to be distracted.
And so finally, your year of being the board president, so how would you say that this year has been as a board president, kind of bringing all of this together? So we've had a lot of success and other things in your tenure as a board member, but this last year as board president, how would you describe being the board president this year?
It's been quite the challenge. I thought to myself, well, I'm not as good. I don't have the presence of mind that some of my colleagues do when it comes to following through on the agenda. But I don't think that I think those things are minutiae. You know, they're not really the things that we should be concerned about. We should really be concerned about the ideas and the things that we talk about. But I try hard to run a tight ship and to respect time. And I started out pretty strong, and then later when I became comfortable, I started to discuss issues a little bit more. But I learned this year to be a better listener. I was kind of forced into that role because, you know, when you're moderator, you have to listen to people better, and you're usually the last one to give your opinion about something. It's kind of nice too. It's refreshing because I learned also that sometimes it's when they discuss things, and by the time that it gets around to you, they've discussed the things that you wanted to discuss, so then you don't have to say as much, you know. And but it's been good. It's been challenging. As you know, in the spring was really hard on us when we didn't always see eye to eye with regard to what was going on at the high school. But thank God that, you know, we always maintain a professional relationship, and even I would think it'd be safe to say a friendship, which is good, and we try to keep it positive. And so, yeah, it's been quite the challenge. But again, I want to bring everybody back to the fact that Mr. Verdugo makes it easy on us because he has this great vision that he continues to follow through on. And he's even said publicly, he said to me personally, that he wants to remain superintendent so he can see this all the way through. So I would like to ask you a question with regard to that.
Sure.
How do you feel about following through on your vision?
I'm very excited. I think, as you know, with the support of the board, we've been very fortunate to come a long way with the things that we've been trying to accomplish, and we still have a lot to do. I think as I mentioned at the board meeting, we're never satisfied with where we're at. Even if we had all A schools, we still want to be A+ schools. And so, that's the thing that we're always striving to be the best. And, the name of this interview is AboveTheBar interviews, and that's what we're always trying to do is be above the bar. In everything we do, get better every day, no matter what we're trying to do. So, but final question, anything that you'd like to share with the community that we haven't discussed?
Yes, something that we heard the other day at the Citizens Council in Tubac, there was a gentleman who asked us about how we were going to do the maintenance for the pool, how we were going to come up with the funds necessary to maintain the pool, because it's very costly to maintain a pool. And I was glad that you were direct about it. You had said that we might have to ask the public again for money for the maintenance of it. And I found this whole conversation rather interesting, because in the first place he had said that, well, during the presidential election you had a big turnout, so as a consequence you were able to secure the funds to build this pool. But what's going to happen if it's not a presidential year and you have an election and you lose? Well, this is all theoretical. I mean, let's look at the facts for a moment. The public gave us the okay, the green light. They passed the override bond, and they were telling us loud and clearly that they wanted us to build a pool. So we followed through. And right now, we're in midstream. We've already broken ground, and we've already done this kind of thing. Now I would be rather surprised, even chagrined, if I found out that they weren't going to vote for us to have the maintenance on it. It defies logic. So we haven't gotten to that. So I don't see how we could be giving answers about things that we're not positive of, or that are not factual. We only deal with things that are factual. The public asked us to build a pool, that's what we're doing. It would be absurd of us, absolutely asinine, for us to stop in the middle of our project and not build the pool and follow through. That's an absurdity. So that's just neither here nor there, nor even over yonder. And I feel I know your team very well. We have one of the best chief financial officers around here. I'd put her up to anybody around here. She's tough and she's a smart lady. You set up around. And I feel that even if that were the case, I feel that we would find innovative ways to maintain that pool. We're Rio Rico. We're District 35. Rio Rico, Tubac, McCaffrey, Carmen. Oh, we had the first the senior valedictorian was from Carmen. Forget that we even represent little places like that where you blink your eyes, you wouldn't even see that town. But at any rate, we're District 35, and we're not about to do what they did in Patagonia. We take pride in our district, and we will find a way, no matter what, to maintain that pool. And we're not looking at the flip side of it, Mr. Verdugo, which I'm sure that you see because you're a very positive person like me too. And that is that our community is going to benefit from this pool. You had mentioned to the people in Tubac that we're coming up with ways so that you'll be able to use the pool. And I know that we're going to open it up for our community. Because as John Fanning and as you have mentioned, this is the hub of our community. We want to be the hub, and we're striving hard to be the hub. It's the heart of our community, and we want to provide the best. There are times in the history of our country we had Social Security. A lot of people didn't think that was going to be able to be maintained, and yet, even though it still has its challenges, people accept it. Change is not always easy, and I feel that when you have this vision, that it challenges our community in lots of ways. But I'm a very positive and faithful man. I believe that we will find the way, even if the overriding bond doesn't pass, we will find a way to continue this. But I think the public is smart enough to know that we need their help and that they supported us the first time. I don't see why they won't support us the next time.
Thank you. Well, I think that's the end of our time together, so thank you for joining me today with our Above the Bar interview. You can find, again, any information on our SCV35.org website, where we'll be posting this video, as well as if you ever need to communicate, you can always communicate at SCV35 Communications email, and we will get that information. So if you want to share anything with Mr. Ramirez as the board president or me as superintendent, please feel free to do so. But again, thank you for spending your time with me today.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for your time.